Okay, I'd like to convene the March 26, 2011 meeting of the Muskegon Complete Streets Committee. And I'm sure Paulina will be joining us soon, and I'll probably take the role as we go along because some people pop in as we go along. So I'll work on the role as we go. Any comments from anyone on the minutes of our February 26th meeting? And I'll start by just saying line 35. Mr. Mastroni asked Ms. Robertson if Wyoming Avenue could drop its speed limit. It says 20 in the minutes. Didn't he say, could we go from 30 to 25? So I'm wondering if the 20 should be 25 on line 35.
We can go back and check that, Bill. I'm not 100% sure, so we can just go back and check it.
Okay, good. Anyone else have a repair on the minutes for February 26th that they'd like to suggest?
I'm sorry, I heard you. I didn't have the button. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it's 30 through here. And my question was, could it be 20? And then I heard that because of New York State, you have to jump through hoops, and we're probably not going to be able to do that. Is that pretty much what it is?
Okay, yeah, so we were making sure it's right in the minute.
Taking a look at 25, so if we went town-wide from 30 to 25, then Wyoming would be at 25 with the rest of the towns.
Okay.
But if your request was 20, we'll leave it in the minutes as 20, I guess. So,
I mean, it just always, it's 30 miles an hour past the co-op, and you turn on Balltown and stuff like that, and then you pull into your house, and it's 30 miles an hour in front of you. It just doesn't make sense to me. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, school zones are 20, and several of our neighbor communities, including the city of Schenectady and Colony and other places, are trying to get down to 25. So, we'll leave it at 30 for now. If your request was 20, then we'll leave it at 20.
Okay.
Any other corrections on the minutes for February 26? If not, I'll entertain a motion, and I'll move acceptance of the minutes of February 26th. And hope for a second.
I'll second that, Bill. This is Jim.
Okay, Jim Levy is a second. Hold your hand up if you're okay with the minutes from February 26th, please. Okay, minutes are accepted. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to Wyoming Avenue. And is Paulina here with us yet? Or
yeah, can you see me?
Are you here, Paulina?
Yeah.
Yes. Would you like to kick us off on Wyoming Avenue, just based on walking the street and what you've learned so far? And we obviously have Mr. Mastroni here with us.
Sure. I walked down a couple weeks ago and talked to one of the neighbors and just got a general idea of what was going on. He seconded what Mr. Mastriani said. He said in the time that he's lived there, which has only been a year, there's been 5 accidents at the stop sign at Wyoming and McClellan. He said that he notices that traffic increases significantly at specific times of the day. And he thought that it occurred with Ellis hospital shifts. So he thought it was like 11, 3:30, 7 p.m. And so he thought it was people leaving their shifts at the hospital and cutting through that street. He also noticed a lot of truck traffic, and he thought it was county trucks, and he had a very specific idea of like what gas station they were using, and I didn't really follow all of that, but it made me think that we could potentially do outreach to the hospital and potentially the county and ask them to reach out to their staff to avoid that strip. I sat at the corner of the stop sign for a while and just observed traffic. What I saw was that people were coming mostly from Schenectady and then turning on McClellan and then traveling that way. I didn't see a lot of traffic going down Wyoming to Baker. But that was, just one afternoon that I was out. I did see that there is a solar powered sign attached to the speed limit sign that says your speed is, and then it gives you a sense of how fast cars are traveling. Posted on the Wyoming side of that street. And I took some pictures. I don't know if all of you have had a chance to see that. I took some photos of what I saw that day. The biggest thing I thought as well, if you're walking from Baker and you turn on Wyoming where the yield sign is, there's a shrub there which right now is bare, but in the summer when that is fully leafed out, that really prevents people who are turning on Baker from Wyoming from being able to see if there are any pedestrians coming on that left side. So if you're a pedestrian and you're traveling against oncoming traffic, as you should be, and you're a car at that yield sign, if you're the driver, you're probably just looking left to see if there's any oncoming traffic, and you're not looking right to see if there's any pedestrians. Even if you are looking right, that shrub is really blocking your view. So I don't know if we can petition to either get that shrub removed or trimmed back, or just get a stop sign there. But I took photos of all of that and I circled the shrub.
No, I do think if the foliage is blocking the sign, then that's a hazard, and that's something that the highway department could do. And I also think, in some intersections in the town where, we have signage, if you have to turn or whatever, we put a double sign there. So either 2 stop signs, for instance, one on one side of the road and one on the other. So if there's a curve in the road or shrubbery or something, that the motorist has a chance to see that there's a sign coming. And also, you walk that intersection. I mean, did you talk about people going quickly from Wyoming to Baker, and not really, the yield sign is is not slowing traffic, right? It's cars go pretty quick.
I run there a lot, and I pretty much avoid that whole yield sign. I just cross and go to the other side because cars just blow right through that yield sign on a regular basis. I didn't see it that day, but I run there pretty regularly and I see that often. During the time that I was there talking to one of the neighbors, a car drove right past us, clearly going way above the speed limit, and she had to slam on her brakes because she didn't see the stop signs at McClellan and Wyoming. So I could see why that is a area of high accidents. I don't know if we can petition for that to be a 4-way stop. I don't know what the next step is. If we ask for a traffic assessment, personally, I feel this is above our pay grade. But Bill and I had a nice conversation yesterday. I don't want to get too far off of Wyoming Avenue. We can come back to this later on in the meeting, but it made me feel like we should use this as a model and come up with a process for how we evaluate these complaints and use this as a template to assess how we move forward. So, we determine a complaint comes in, we do a data collection process, we petition neighbors or canvass neighbors, we assess the site, we do a traffic count, we review options, and then we get those options approved by the highway department, the fire department, the town. Potentially, have that reviewed by a traffic engineer to see if that's appropriate for that street, and then implement the plan, and then do another traffic count to see if our project was successful or not. So I think we should put something like that together and use that as a template for future complaints or future demo projects, or just have something so that we know how to handle this and make recommendations to the town in the future. But again, we can talk about that. I don't want to derail the Wyoming Avenue.
Yeah, I was wondering if, thank you. I was wondering if I could just add a little bit, because I did have some information from Officer Stevens that did do a little bit of a traffic count. I think I mentioned it last time. There's going from Wyoming towards McClellan, it's about 320 a day. And coming from McClellan down, it's close to 300 a day. And we're monitoring speed in one direction. That was, I think, a couple years ago. And at any time, you can ask him for a count on the speed, because it clocks it in one direction, unfortunately, not both directions. So there is some data there. Living towards the corner and talking to people on both sides, you have a yield sign at the end not a little before, at the end of a street that goes both left and right, which sort of makes it useless. And I see a lot of potential bad, when I worked at GE, we used to count near misses like an accident. There's a whole bunch of near misses. I have a picture of a kid walking with a baby in his hand. Somebody coming down Wyoming, I turned around, I knew they wouldn't stop at the yield, and went right around, and he jumped back. It's very frustrating. The stop sign, the electronic was a great effort. I've seen it other places where if you're going above 30, it says slow down. It doesn't say you're doing 40. It does say thank you if you're going under 30, which probably makes the driver a little happier. But I'm open for anything. I think there was a crosswalk on Regent, but that intersection and the volume is a problem. Telling somebody that gets out of work at a hospital or somewhere else not to cut through, I mean, I'd do anything if it would slow down the volume, but I'm not sure how well that would be received.
Okay, Jim Levy, do you want to offer anything on Wyoming Avenue?
No, I mean, I can echo what Pauline has said. I mean, I walk through there regularly, experience the same thing, other than that part of town. But, I think what Pauline has said, makes sense. And, the idea of putting together kind of an outline of how we handle this, and at which point it gets out of committee and then needs to go to, town staff, whether it's a highway town board or go to an engineer, I think makes sense. Our role really should be to find information, collect, whatever, complaints or issues or concerns people have, and then see what we can do to help, start resolving those. But at some point, it needs to get out of the committee. There's only so much we can do. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. But in terms of Wyoming, yeah, the other than the demonstration project, most probably going to require an engineering study. Stop sign, I think, would require an engineering study. Anything we do permanently or semi-permanently would probably require engineering. So, again, I think we're at the point of talking about what the options are, what the concerns are, what the data collection.
So I was talking about this with the police department too, and I think we were hoping that Wyoming was a little bit wider and maybe it would be a better application of chicane, but I don't know that it's very much wider than like Regent. So then I think maybe you had brought this up, Jim, or someone else is maybe looking if for a demonstration project we could try a different treatment that we haven't tried yet, like a speed table with a bump out curb in a place or something like that. Right. As a demonstration project. And I did get a lot of emails from Wyoming people saying that they were in support of us looking at it and very interested in a demonstration project, which was one of the big things that we wanted to look at for our next project. So I'm very excited about that. And I agree with you, Paulina, we can't do engineering, and some of it does go above our pay grade. But I think that we can take a look at some of the complete streets standard treatments that we're looking at. And if we have people on board who want to try stuff with us, then I was thinking we could like see if we can get, you know, some help from, remember I talked to like an engineering firm that maybe we work with a lot or something and would be willing to just throw out a quick design for us and they could have their name on the demonstration project. I know you sent out grants, Jim, but I don't think it was a capital coexist grant yet, right? You haven't seen that come out yet, right?
No, I can go online and look right now to see what it is.
So between either trying to get just a quick demonstration project engineered or if we could get a coexist, you know, grant, I don't think that we need, it doesn't have to be fleshed out to the point where, you know, it's going to be perfect and we put it on the ground in perpetuity. We want to get something out there to see how people feel and see what the effects, you know, are for traffic and stuff like that.
And I guess
Laura,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's okay. Wyoming is also where that connection between Wyoming and McClellan is Schenectady. So is that going to become an issue too?
I mean, I don't listen. You got to take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I prefer to do intermunicipal things. That's my preference. Anytime we can.
So certainly for funding that helps,
Yeah.
but then it also means we have to work, you know, with the town of Niskayuna and the city of Schenectady, you know, on that project, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I think multi-municipal can help with grant funding, but you know, it's a coordination effort we'd have to do.
I had a quick question, if I could, and this is all great stuff for somebody that lives in Wyoming to hear. I know that it's above pay grades and it may take a while and that sort of thing, but temporarily, do we have the power to get a yellow flashing light with the summer coming at the bottom of Wyoming and Baker, just to make people a little more aware they're flying down to see something like that?
I have never seen that as a temporary treatment. My guess to that is probably no, because when you're doing temporary treatments, like you let people know what the window is that you're putting them out there. They're removable, and you put signs up warning people that there's a traffic change. Whereas if you're going to put up a light that's flashing all summer, that goes back to what Jim was saying, where you probably just need to have a true traffic engineer look at that and make sure that that's, you know, warranted and that kind of thing. But it's something that we could like put in a list of treatments that we could suggest and look at with, you know.
So Laura, I think the easiest response to that would be the speed signs that we have. Some of them flash, some of them actually have like an LED light that flashes if you're over the speed limit or something like that. Something like that as part of an installation for an electronic speed sign would probably be the answer, you know, the best answer to that question. If we could get something installed, that wouldn't necessarily require engineering. It would require a different type of sign, I guess, than what you have on Wyoming. But yeah, an installation of a light would have to probably be engineered. It would have to have rationale behind it.
That's a great idea with the sign, though.
Yeah, and doing transportation planning is for a profession, I can tell you that some of the stuff unfortunately does take a little time, but it needs to be done right to make sure that, you know, what we do makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just to summarize then quickly, we've heard from Martha Beck and Mr. Mastriani and some other folks about speed and traffic volume on Wyoming Avenue. We've heard that, and we do want to get, if we can get from Officer Stevens, the traffic volume, so we know those volumes from Mr. Mastriani. He hasn't mentioned what the average speed was, so maybe we can get that from Mr. Stevens.
You can.
A couple of things we can do. One is we're an advisory committee, so the town board are the ones that own the road that would have to make some decisions, especially in the town of Niskayuna. Complete Streets, we can make some recommendations to them. And we've heard about the volume and the speed. We have heard that there's a recommendation that we consider a stop sign over the yield sign that's at Baker and Wyoming. We can ask the Niskayuna PD to take a look at that. There's a larger trucks perhaps than should be on the road, so we'd have to take a look at the town if there's an ordinance on a weight limit of trucks that can be on that road, and then that would either be maybe a camera or some other way to look at those. Then there's the notion of possibly a speed table or a speed platform, something that is a rubber device that would go in the road. We can certainly take a look at that. We can ask Ms. Robertson to speak with both Highway and Police Committee to see if they would consider entertaining that, if we thought that was an option. And so what we'd want to do is look at those and see whether they might be a possible application here. And I know that Mr. Mastriani and others have said they prefer the traffic coming over on Girling to make the right on McClellan to go down to Knott if they're going that way, as opposed to coming down Wyoming,
Yeah.
right turn on Baker, and Baker over to Knott to go left or right there. And so we'd want to see that, you know, speed platforms do help reduce traffic a little bit and might not be that much of an impediment to drivers, that would encourage them to make that right turn on McClellan. And even if they don't, if the traffic platforms help slow the traffic down to 25 miles an hour, that would be a good thing. And we've heard your plea that we'd like to at least look at going down to 25 miles an hour. So that's something Complete Streets Committee might look at to see if other municipalities are going to try to go from 30 to 25. We can certainly at least ask the town board to take a look at that. So, and then another thing that Pauline has suggested, we'll talk about our kind of worksheet, but if we do have something, we'd probably ask the town to, if they want to do speed platforms or something like that, that they consult the traffic engineering firm so that, you know, we get their input on whether this makes sense to do. And that, you know, once, if Highway and Police Committee recommended the town board makes a decision they want to try it, then it would be their decision. And it would help that, I think, if Complete Streets Committee is making a recommendation on using that. So we are grateful to get the input that you've given us, and Mrs. Beck and the other folks on Wyoming Avenue. And so we're going to go forward. But you need to understand that we're not God. We're only an advisory committee.
Right.
We advise the
Right.
town board, and they make decisions. So that would be the path we're going forward. And to
Okay.
Paulina's
Thank
point, where this project has helped us kind of identify some decision points along the way that not only do we need to make for Wyoming, but really Fieldstone Estates, any other street in the town where citizens come to us and want some assistance. So that's going to be another good thing out of looking at your questions. So, anyone else have a comment on Wyoming Avenue before we move on?
May I just make a statement? I'm not a member of the committee.
Yes, you may. Go ahead. You're John Sharkey. Where do you live, John?
I live on Baker Avenue,
Okay.
right between Dean and Dorwalt, and lived on Wyoming Avenue before that. So I lived by Baker Woods. I walk my dog past there all the time. The yield sign has been an issue since I lived at, when did I, 1918 Baker Ave, I think, Wyoming Avenue, for years. And I have young children. It was part of the reason we moved to Baker Avenue, that in addition to getting a bigger home. The bottom of that hill at that yield sign has been a problem for 35 years.
Okay.
I know we looked at getting a stop sign way back when I had young children. My youngest is 35 years old now. And it's always it's a rolling yield. It's a rolling stop sign down at the corner of Baker and Lexington. And it does seem, you know, and I've just seen how effective it's been to have the police department sitting out there on Dean Street as we head up, you know, to slow the traffic down. Maybe a suggestion to the police to spend some time there, just making a visibility that we end that rolling stop. Because the stop sign is also treated like a yield sign at the corner of Baker and Lexington. So it just may be something to look at, but it has been a long-term problem, and people using it as a cut through. And I don't see you'll change human behavior for doing that, but I do look at perhaps a stop sign down at the bottom that perhaps have some police visibility once in a while might help to slow things down. I just throw that in as someone who lives there.
Okay, thank you. We do have the recommendation to consider going to a stop from a yield, and certainly your input on that helpful. And certainly if you're a police officer, it's always a judgment call on a yield. Somebody comes down and a yield does not mean they have to stop. They have to slow down, look to see that there's not traffic coming on Baker before they proceed. A stop sign is much clearer, and if you roll through a stop sign, if there's a police officer there, either you stop or you don't. If you don't, then you're going to get a citation. So it's a much firmer.
Because it's the next stop sign, right?
Yeah.
It's the next stop sign right at the Baker in Lexington, which is, I don't know, not very far away. They think if they can roll through the yield, they roll through the stop sign.
Yeah. Well, we need to.
And also there, you need. Yeah, I'm sorry. It would be really nice to have stop signs in the other direction too, because that would really deter people from blowing through there.
Yeah.
Can I?
And having taken, the blockage down from the bush on the other end is also important. I just noticed how much better things have gotten by the Baker Woods, where our superintendent of Baker Park took down those horrible forsythias, I think they were, that you can see around that corner, because that was also a big blind curve for a long time.
Yeah, no, that's a
those
clear
trees,
request
that really
to the
does
highway
help.
department. If the foliage impedes the sign, that's a clear, Complete Street says to the highway superintendent, motorists complain that the foliage is blocking the sign and people roll through it, then they'll be out there to clean it up and we can make that request. So.
Yep.
Okay, anything else on Wyoming? Thank you again, John, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Mastriani, and Martha Beck for giving her input, and Paulina for walking the street and getting some input from over there. So we've got to move on, but thank you all for Wyoming.
Go ahead, sir. If you have something to say, sir, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Tommy Nicky. I live at the corner of Lexington and Baker, and I've been working from home for the past year. And I look to my left out the window each day at the intersection of Wyoming and Baker. I just wanted to share something with you real quick, if that's okay. I won't take.
Sure. Tell me, what's your street address there?
I'm sorry. I'm at 1604 Lexington. It's the
16,
southeast corner of that intersection, which I.
Okay, go ahead.
One moment, please. I just want to see if I can share this real quick. Bear with me here. Are you able to see this that I'm sharing?
Yes.
Okay, this is my front yard.
Yeah.
Where my children are no longer allowed to play. This you'll see is the intersection at Lexington and Baker, which is a two-way stop, not a four-way stop. This car came through the yield on Wyoming, then couldn't quite figure out what was going on and ended up about 18 inches from my front door.
Oh my goodness.
So we have our children play in the backyard. Now, I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. At the intersection of Wyoming and Baker, there are 3 children under the age of 8 years old. And I talk to people constantly who ask me about another project that I'm involved with in the town of Niskayuna that's relative to the construction that will be coming up at the Knott and Balltown area. And it's becoming even more widely known that if you want to avoid traffic at Knott and Balltown, if you're coming up from the Ellis Hospital area on Knott, you make a left onto Lexington, and you only have to stop once between there and the high school. Or if you make a left onto Baker, you only have to stop one time between there, and you've actually gone through you don't have to deal with co-op, you don't have to deal with the high school, not any of that. So I've called ambulances because people have been injured in accidents here. I've had people in my front yard literally a foot and a half from crashing into my actual home. We walk our children across the street now for this reason, and I walk every day. And what I'll tell you is all of that, we have you can call it a 4-way intersection because it's a 2-way, 1-way each direction on Lexington with driveways that also exit into it. We actually have a 7-way intersection here with only stop signs in 2 directions. And add into that, people driving the wrong way down Lexington Parkway on top of all of these other things going on. If you come from Keys Avenue and don't see the small sign, you make a left into oncoming traffic on Lexington. If you come down Baker and don't know how to navigate a six-way stop, you make a left onto Baker. Left onto Lexington going back towards Schenectady. And if you're coming from the other direction in Baker, where the field is, you get to a stop sign, make your first left. You're now driving into oncoming traffic again. So I know we're well past time. I can sense that, but I wanted to share those photos with you. I didn't foil a police report or anything like that, but I'm certain that if this committee wanted to do their diligence, they could foil the last 5 or 6 years of any calls to this intersection for the police department or for ambulances and find that it's not an empty list. They have been here already. And as much as I'm conscious of the fact that much happens, not this committee in particular, but related to stop signs and things of that sort after someone gets hurt. I think everyone here would probably prefer that something happened before someone gets hurt. And clearly that's why you're doing what you're doing already. But I can't stress to you enough that changing the yield from a yield to a stop sign at Wyoming and Baker will help a piece of the problem. But in short of having a four-way stop or something to stop people from driving 50 miles an hour through this intersection in one way or another with the potential of oncoming traffic going the wrong way, it's a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. So that's all I wanted to share with you. I'm sorry for being long-winded, but I've been here 10 years. I'm not leaving, but we don't go in the front yard with our kids anymore.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. We are happy to get that input. So thank you very much for joining us. Okay.
Kelly, can you stop sharing your screen? Thank you.
Anyone else on Wyoming? We have a lot to do, but any other comments on Wyoming before we move on? Okay. Let's move on to Fieldstone Drive. And anyone had the opportunity to drive Fieldstone? It connects now to State Street. You come up North Allendale and kind of weave around a little bit, and then you're on Fieldstone. And as Laura pointed out, there's kind of an open stretch from the intersection of North Allendale and Fieldstone going north to Console Road, and it has the hike and bike path on one side and not a lot of street trees, so it has good visibility. It's a straight shot, and so the PD has reported there's a lot of speeding there, and so that is also another street that might be a possibility for a demonstration project. And I believe that Paulina had said to me, gee, maybe some shrubs that could be planted between the bike path and Fieldstone Estates would help break the visual line up a bit. We talked about the possibility of chicanes. I don't know if this is a fairly open road, so that might be a possibility of something that we could look at there. And also, in my mind, street trees was a possibility because you get the tree canopy. I think the more it looks like, I mean, there are a lot of walkers over there now, that you get more greenery and you get more walkers. Would help slow things down. And I guess if we're willing to look at speed tables on Wyoming, that it might be another street that we could look at a speed table on. So anyone else been able to drive Fieldstone and have a thought on that street?
So I was just gonna leave them on. I reached out to the police department to get their data on both Wyoming and Fieldstone. It seems like we're getting a little more interest in Wyoming, at least now. So I think maybe, we could focus on Wyoming for now and then put Fieldstone on for a later project. But they're totally different treatments too. So they're both kind of I think, good places where we can get community input and outreach, and then actually probably try two different types of things.
Okay. Okay, what I would encourage members to to drive that. When you go down North Allendale, as you go down to State Street, it's a little bit of a hill. So some of the people that walk on Fieldstone, they say there's also a lot of speed going down the hill from Fieldstone getting down to State Street. And obviously, now that North Allendale and Fieldstone connect State Street to Console Road, it's become a little bit of a cut through. And so you have some additional traffic there beside the traffic that's already on the street. So, well, anyway, between now and our next meeting, I'd encourage people to drive it and even get out and walk it and see what you think. And we have some traffic calming applications that Pauline has been busy putting together. So we'd want to think about what is something we might suggest. And I think, like Wyoming, if you have high speed there, then you've already got the PD that would be supportive of some infrastructure solution that would help, and certainly the neighbors, if they're not happy with the speed on the street, that they'd be supportive of something as well, I would hope. Okay, let's move on. Anything else on Fieldstone before we go? Anybody else a comment or no? We're all set? Okay, priority letters approval. Again, for folks tuning in to watch us, we have a large map where we look at non-motorized movement throughout the town. I guess maybe if you've got a motor on your bike, then you'd be a motorized moving about the town. But we look at pedestrian and bike access, and we've looked at 4 different entities: the state, the county, the school district, and the town. And on our large map, and we've tried to identify 3 priorities for each and send them a letter saying we'd like you to take these into consideration. And I've said we're going to work on getting grants, but each of these entities has got transportation money on their own, and we'd be hopeful that they would consider using some of those transportation funds to spend on these projects. So the letters were in the packet. Has everybody had a chance to look at those? And they pretty much reflect what we decided at our last meeting, and so I don't want to run through all of them again, but did we already vote on the letters, Laura, or is today we need to vote on the modified?
No, we voted at the only reason they're on there is an update so you guys could see the resolution. The town board was very much in support of them and did talk about them at the last town board meeting. So the next step is I just need you to come to Town Hall, Bill, and sign them.
Okay. Well, to the committee, I'm glad that Laura took them to both police and highway committee, and I think it's a good step that we've talked about having the support from the town board on projects that we're working on, and they've given that to us. Our 3 requests to the state, our 3 requests to the county, our 3 requests to the school district, and 3 requests to the town of Niskayuna that the town board has endorsed all those. And so they're all on notice, and that's a good thing. They're supportive, that's a good thing. And the input that Pauline has had, that we attach a sentence saying that we intend to schedule an appointment to talk about these requests. I think that's good, because then the traffic folks in each of these entities know that they're interested enough to schedule a meeting and come and talk to us, and they'll be back next year. And so we want to try to work on some of these projects. So that's a good thing. Okay, Jim Levy, Complete Streets.
Before you move on, I was thinking today, before we contact Cosimo to follow up on that letter, we should try and schedule our pedestrian count for the schools now that the weather's warm. I know we kind of pushed that off in the fall because it got cold, but maybe we could get our pedestrian counts of the kids and cars and bikes, and then we can, when we meet with him, we'll have data in front of us.
Well, I'm willing to think about that, but I do think our input in as we looked at each of the school campuses and how we could make each of those walkable and bikeable. I think the pedestrian counts would help, but really we're we're looking at the sidewalks and stuff that serve each school campus. And I guess I'm not sure, and I certainly hear from the committee that I'm not sure pedestrian counts would change our recommendations at this point. I mean, I think that we've kind of identified some things, and I mean, it would take us some time and energy to get the pedestrian counts, and I'd rather keep things
change our
moving.
recommendations. It would just sort of bolster our, you know, if you go there with data and say, this is how many people are biking, this is how many people are walking, this is, it'll just help bolster our request. That was my thinking anyways, but.
Well, I'm not above collecting counts, and now that I'm retired and have to break my day into daytime drinking and Westerns, you can always count on me to get a chair and go out and count some pedestrians. But we have 8 schools, and you know, it's a little bit of work, as we found from River and St. David's and doing Knott Street and Regent to get those counts, especially if you go from early in the morning to late at night. We've kind of used everybody on the committee and buying a couple hours. And so it's not just 2 intersections, it's 8 schools. And so that's a lot. And I'm supportive of doing that. I guess just to kind of keep things moving, I would, at this point, rather just sign the letters and send them. And, you know, when we meet with Cosmo, if we wanted to pick a couple schools, like maybe Van Antwerp and Hillside, to do some counts to buttress, you know, I think that's certainly, we could certainly take a look at that. But I'm happy to hear from the committee. For now, I'd like to just kind of keep it moving and send the letters, and you know, if we can fit in some counts, I'm not past doing that. So anyway, do we need to do Clark next before we move on to the survey, or?
Well, he kind of is next. Go ahead. So, I mean, I just put the survey in there but yeah, I'd say it's time.
Okay. Before we touch base with Clark, I did want to say that we do have open questions in here, and Clark has taken a look at how we might go about coding open questions. And so we have 15 questions, and then on several of them, even though it's kind of a yes/no, there are still some that there's an open response that we need to code. So we actually need help on coding narrative things in order to complete the survey. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 of the 15 questions that we have some narrative responses that we need to code. And before we jump over to Clark on doing that, though, I do want to say, in looking at the difference between question 2 and question 3, and question 2 asks about walking prior to the pandemic, and question 3 asks about walking after the pandemic, that in the year prior to March of 2020, we had about 58% of the people said they walked either the category 3 to 5 days a week or more than 5 days a week. So we had 38% in there. And during the pandemic, from March 2020 to March 2021, we had 76% of the survey respondents say they walked, that they were in either the 3 to 5 days or the more than 5 days. So really, we went from 58.3% to 76.7%. It's actually an 18 percentage point drop, and really it's a 31.5% increase. And so to me, that's very heartening news. We've had a 31% increase in the number of people that are walking in the town of Niskayuna. And so I certainly think that is supportive of having pathways that are safe to walk, getting safe crosswalks, getting the bike lanes, doing the kinds of things that we're doing. So I'm encouraged by that. Okay, we do have, I do have some other questions on it, but we have really open-ended questions. And question 9, Clark Henry is working on that one as an example, and I'm happy to tackle question 11, but we have some others, and we need to get some data collection on that. So either Clark or Jim Levy, one or the other, why don't you jump in?
Well, Clark, since you have to go, if you want to talk about what you want, I can go after that. I was just going to summarize question 13. So
okay, I'll jump in for a second then. So let me know if everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it, Clark.
Okay, great. So yeah, Bill asked me to just I offered up something I had a little exposure to, really in lines with a brainstorming exercise. It's nothing all that complicated, just something I got a little exposure to called an affinity diagram, which is really just a process for organizing the ideas that people come up with during a brainstorming session. And these open-ended questions are very much like brainstorming on that particular topic. So I just dug up a couple slides here to share with people. This is an example of, again, going from a brainstorming response on a particular question and how to organize those responses that you get into common themes. So these are just some examples. We did it with 3x5 cards. Obviously here they're doing it with Post-it notes. The way I was exposed to it, a group of people got together, did a little brainstorming on a question, and then you each walked up with your 5 3x5 cards or something, tacked them to a wall and kind of grouped them under categories as those categories develop. So here's another example where they're doing it in a similar manner, where they're taking Post-it notes. On the right, the question was, how can I better meet my client's needs? And then you can see the purple Post-it notes are a couple different categories, and the blue Post-it notes are the responses that people gave. So kind of applying that to our survey, I looked at question 9, and I'm almost done. I've done 12 of the 300 and some responses, so I only have 356 to go. But a couple categories jumped out pretty quickly. You could see that people were interested in a crosswalk somewhere, or a bike lane somewhere, or sidewalks. So the way I would see this working is, as you read through those responses, some of them may fall under these existing 5 categories, or something might break out as a new category all to its own. So as we read through, we could kind of flush out the categories that came up, and then maybe we would want to take a second pass and break down, like crosswalk, then look at, okay, how many people wanted a crosswalk on St. Joseph's or on Pinecrest Drive? You could break it down another level. So that's the concept. I'm definitely willing to try it on question 9. And if you give me a couple more days next week, I'll make my way through question 9. And then, as Bill had suggested, I could do a quick 1-page summary of question 9 and show you what it looks like.
Yeah, my hope in terms of a product that we would all look at or we could share with the town board would be, here's an open-ended question, and we'd want to summarize what we learned from citizens. And so each of us going through a set of responses, whether 50 or 60 or 100 or 300 narrative responses that, as Clark has said, you go through the first 10 or 15 or whatever, and some general categories start emerging. And then as you get other responses, if you can fit them into one of the categories that you already have, then that category grows. And so you'd have maybe a summary sheet that's got 10 or 15 sentences on it, or general categories, and how many responses fell into each one of those, so that you'd be able to look that over and get a feel for what citizens felt on that. And it could be the first one has got, if you're looking at 300, maybe 50 people answered yes to that first category, and then you work your way along. So,
and then I would kind of treat it as a Pareto chart, where pretty quickly, if one of them has 50, and you start to get some that have 2 each, at some point I would kind of lump them into other. And you'd only really go with the top, pick your percent, 80% or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And somebody could have 2 or 3 concerns, right? So if you've got those listed, then they'd each get a mark, even though it's one respondent. So we'd have more concerns than respondents if you've got multiple. But the fact that somebody said 2 things, they're both important. So we'd be counting input in terms of responses. So you might have 300 respondents, but you might have 400 responses because some people said 2 or 3 different things, and we'd want to catch those. And we wouldn't want to throw away a response just because it was the second or third thing somebody said. So we'd capture them.
And I agree with that. And I actually saw that. And as I was reviewing the couple I did, there's one where there were 2 responses. I only registered it in 1, but that's because I already sent the file out 3 times. So I didn't change it again. But I agree. 1 response could have multiple inputs.
So we have some others, like question 2, for instance. We have some folks that it's kind of provide comments. Well, 37 people, didn't fall into one of the categories, like not regularly, once or twice. They had comments. So we really kind of need to take those 37 people and try the best we can to assign them into one of the numeric categories, either not regularly, once or twice a week. This is walking 3 to 5 or more than 5. And so we would really complete that table. So instead of having, we'd get from 326, we'd have all the 363 coded in a category. But then we would take these 37 and, we'd code up those categories. So we would get the percent complete with the 337. And we would assign those 37 cases as best we could to one of the categories. They even say it themselves, but then we'd capture, what did they say in these 37 here? So since Clark has agreed to take question 9, I'm going to do question 11. Question 12 is 318. Question 13 is 209. Question 14 is 166. I would be kind of asking for other members of the committee if they'd be willing to take a question. And, if we all take one and work on it, it wouldn't drown any one member. And hopefully you take a look at the procedure that Clark's described here. So we all kind of try to use the same method to code up the narrative responses and spread the work around. So if you could send either me or Jim or Clark or all 3 of us an email saying I'm willing to do question X, or if we don't get volunteers, maybe I'll just ask some folks if they work on a question and try to get them done. So Jim, I do have kind of a couple other things. Clark, do you want to say anything more on affinity coding or?
No, I think I'm fine. Thanks.
Okay. When you get question 9 done, would you be willing to share it with the committee so they kind of see what you did? And for instance, I'm looking at question 11, and that concerns the the crosswalk at Regent and Knott, and also the crosswalk at River and St. Joseph's Drive. And so for say Knott and Regent, I would have like a crosstab table there where I would code all the stuff. First would be, do you use this crosswalk? Do you walk across Knott Street at Regent? Yes or no? And so that would be first set of things. Then I'd have, do you support a crosswalk at the intersection of Regent and Knott? And that would be yes or no. So I'd fill in my 2x2 crosstab table. But then for the cases that fall into each box, I would list the narrative responses, because there may be some people that, they don't cross Knott at Regent, but they like the idea of having a crosswalk. And so you'd be able to capture that. And I would do the same thing. I'd have a crosstab table for River and St. Joseph. And I'd say, do you cross this intersection? Yes or no? And then I'd have, do you support a crosswalk here? Yes or no? And I try to fill in the boxes in that crosstab table. And then for each box in the table, if people say, I support a crosswalk there, then, what would the reasons be so that we capture the data there? And that would kind of be the plan that we go along. I did have a couple questions, like on question, say, 6, we say, how safe from a traffic safety perspective only do you feel when walking or biking throughout the town? And so it lands on about a 5, but looking at that, it's hard for me to know, is that good or bad? And do we have some data to compare to, or do we say we've got a problem, or do we say it's not so bad? I'm kind of stuck on, we have an average here, we have a reply, but it's hard for me to know, is this good news or not good news? So that was a question in my mind on a couple that say question 6, question 7.
Yeah, Bill, for those were the slider bar questions. So some of that relevancy comes out of what the answers were that people put in there. So, for 6, it was, very safe, somewhat safe, or not safe. So that slider bar is the 5 means that the average response would have been somewhat safe. And then at one end would be very safe, the other end would be not safe. So
we just need to set the categories up and put the percentages in. So this goes to a percent table for us to look at.
Well, there are a couple things, but certainly we need to translate the question, the answer categories over into that, and then figure out how you want to analyze it. But that will help significantly. That 5 doesn't mean anything until you kind of relate that back to the answers. So that's part of that question. It's not all of the answer, but that's part of it.
Okay, good. I also, don't know if people, took a look at the accessibility question where we had schools, parks, Mohawk Hudson Bike Trail, other neighborhoods, stores and shops. And, just looking at the percentages on it's page 9 of 15 in the pages in the agenda that Laura sent out to us. But just looking at it, it's pretty clear to me that, accessibility to work is not great, really. It's only 35%. A lot of people say biking or walking to work is not really accessible. And if you go to Albany or even a long ways in Schenectady, not terribly accessible. Other neighborhoods looks like it's pretty good. It's about 80% if you look at either very accessible or somewhat accessible. And then, we've got parks at 71%, stores 70%, schools 64%. So, I don't know. I'm somewhat encouraged. Our town can be more accessible, but it does have some accessible to it. And I think our effort to promote really our town hike and walk and bike plan will facilitate improving all these. And I think as we look at bottlenecks and other connections, if you fix one or two, it helps improve everything to parks, to schools, to other neighborhoods. And so I don't know if anybody else has a reaction to any other questions, but I thought those were both important. And I also thought question 13, where we ask about things appropriate for changing, really part of the question asks, would you be willing to talk to a Complete Streets member? Well, we can find out who those folks are and reach out to them. But generally, we're asking folks if you're aware of some improvement that could be made, please tell us what it is. And so this is 209 respondents, but going through that to find out what people are saying. I mean, those would all be things that we'd want to take a look at to see how we can improve our big map on street connections, either adding connections or taking a look at where we have bottlenecks that prevent people from getting to one place or another. We'd want to take a look at those. So,
Bill, this is Jim. Really quickly on that one. So that was the one that I summarized for today, just really quickly, because this is the one where we actually asked people to let us know if they wanted a demonstration project, because we are looking for demonstration projects in locations where the neighbors want it.
Sure.
Out of that question, we had 211 responses. 160 of those responses listed specific things people wanted to see. And out of that, 29 of those were listing projects people wanted to see with contact information, which is what we were really looking for. Fortunately, out of those 29 responses with contact information, only 2 of them were really demonstration projects. The others were, this is done on our block. But I do think that gives some things we can work on. Certainly gives us, people we can reach out to. But that, again, we're hoping to get demo project locations and ideas and contact names. And I think we have some stuff we can work with, but not a lot of demo projects per se.
Okay.
Just a quick summary of question 13, just so that everybody knows.
Any chance that you could send that out to the committee if it's a page or two on what you learned, or not right now necessarily, but when you feel like you've got it? I mean, that might be helpful to others of us trying to code up narrative questions. So
I can send it out to the committee. It should be on your screen right now. Those questions. And I didn't put names on here because we promised everyone to keep contact information private. But
okay.
This list of locations and the concern or issue that people had where there was contact information that people said, feel free to contact me to discuss further.
Okay. So you feel like there were only a couple possible demonstration projects that came out of this?
Well, there are only people said they'd like a demonstration project. I think we can probably pull demonstration projects out of this if we need to, but demonstration projects seem to be naturally coming our way anyway. So I don't know. That list is developing, both from this and the other efforts. So I'm not too concerned about that.
Okay.
But I'm just saying because I know one of the focus areas of the survey is just trying to see, who wanted what and could we get, people to contact to talk about it in front of their house kind of thing. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I'll send. Yep, not a problem.
Okay. Anybody else have any comment or thought on the survey? So, I mean, we need to thank Clark for doing some work on a plan how to code open-ended, and Jim for doing the summary. So he's got a question to share with us, and Clark will share some stuff with us. And if there's, a particular one out of question 2 or 3 or 7 or 12, 13 or 14, let me see, Jim, you did 13, right? Okay, so 13. So question 2, 3, 7, 12 or 14. If you're out there and you'd like to do one of those, send me an email and we'll divvy up the rest of the work and we'll keep going. Anything else on the survey? Okay. The subcommittee for the 2021 demonstration project. At our last meeting, Carla, Paulina, Jim, and Lisa all volunteered to be on the subcommittee. So we will be looking at a project. So I'd encourage you to to get together, to take a look at Wyoming, take a look at Fieldstone, maybe take a look at the list that Jim Levy's sending around, and if one of those works, or you have some other idea, and I don't know that we're even limited to just one. If you wanted to do a couple, we can think about that. But and if someone else wants to be on the subcommittee for 2021, you could certainly volunteer to do that. And so, anything else? I mean, well, the committee, you need to talk and give some thought to whether you like Wyoming or whether there's another idea that you might like to do or whatever. But hopefully you can talk on the phone or talk amongst yourselves and give us a recommendation. So, okay. Going to standard traffic calming measures requests, Paulina suggested that we have a procedure, and she agreed to put some items down and maybe send it out to us before our next meeting, so that as we get requests for traffic calming things, either from Fieldstone or Wyoming or Via Del Mar or Lexington Boulevard and Baker Avenue or any street in the town, that we kind of have a process that we use, which would be, the steps that Paulina is going to outline, so that we do our work. We ask the town to do their work. And would you be willing, Paulina, just to kind of outline what you thought were some steps, and she's going to send us a draft, and maybe we can each look at the draft, and we need to add something or change something by our next meeting, we could do that. But I think it's helpful to have a procedure that we would use. So go ahead, Pauline.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sure. I kind of mentioned it briefly in the Wyoming discussion, but pretty much the complaint comes in, and I think we should also decide, like, is one complaint enough to trigger this process? Do we need multiple complaints? I think that as word spreads, you know, our committee could be fielding traffic complaints, you know, that could take up a lot of our time if we decide that, or as word spreads, you know, and people start sending this in. So we kind of need to decide, like, what's the threshold to trigger this process. But I feel like it needs to start with data collection. So we do traffic counts, we canvass the neighbors, we measure the street. We just go and assess the site and decide, you know, what's what. We like I sat on the corner and watched traffic going in one direction and sort of judge for ourselves. Is this worthy of a demo or
So the next step would be
personally, I think that it should then go to a traffic engineer, and they should determine whether or not it's a demo project, and then what demo project is appropriate. I think
as we make some suggestions, though, right? In other words, between
it's
talking to the residents, identify the problem, we make some suggestions.
Personally, I think it's a lot of our time to research what those, you know, maybe for Jim, he knows these things off the top of his head, but for me, I don't have a background in this. So for me to spend a lot of time researching what those options are, you know, my research, that time could be better spent doing other things. That's just my personal opinion. Other people can decide we should research what those options are. We can make suggestions, but then the next step would be submit those options for approval. It goes to the highway department, police and fire, town board, traffic engineer for review. Then the next step would be to implement a plan, whatever the plan is that's decided upon. Then the last step would be data collection again, traffic review, whatever, to determine whether the project was successful or not. That's just a rough draft that I came up with. I'm happy to share that with everybody for edits, review, comments. I'll put it, I have it in a Google Doc. I'll share it with everybody. You can comment on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, good first step. And just as we have Mr. Mastriani and others asking kind of what our role is, they want to talk to us, John Sharkey, other citizens in the town. But, you know, it's important for them. I mean, it's important for us to understand our process, even for the town board to look at, well, here's the complete streets process. And then we're going to make recommendations to town highway, police, and the town board, and it would be up to them to, you know, implement a procedure or some modification to the roadway or some change in signage. And they may say, well, we have engineering firms that we have on retainer or that we refer stuff to. And so we would ask one of those to either take a look at something suggested by Complete Streets or to maybe make their own suggestion. And then we try something. And as Paulina points out, we have data collection before, so that somebody says they've got a problem, we either collect the data ourselves or we get the data from the police department, and then, you know, go from there, collect data at the end, so that we're in the business of making recommendations to the town board, but the town board owns the streets, and so they're the ones that, you know, would have to make some decisions. But at least it's a process, and I feel like we're doing our role. Citizens have concerns, or even the town board hears from citizens and asks us to take a look at a situation. And so if we're in the traffic calming business, we can at least make some suggestions based on what we see. And go forward. But I think it's a good step, and so Pauline has volunteered to send her draft list out. We'll all give some comments to it, and then we'll try to come up with something that's more finalized, and either send that to Police and Highway Committee so they are aware that these are the steps we're going to use, and will be helpful to us. Also, on traffic calming, I know Jim Levy's, we're working on a workbook of maybe the top 10 traffic calming things for Niskayuna options. And so there's a few pages of that in here. I think that's good. It's, you know, we have some examples, and I think it's good that we have examples. If we have an example from Niskayuna at best, if we don't have Niskayuna, but even if we've got one that's in Waterford or one that's in Glenville or the city of Schenectady or Colony or somewhere where we can look at something like speed platform or a median with trees or some curb bump outs, whatever it is, we can see one, and we've got a picture of one there. It'll be helpful to our boards to see an option and maybe even see some things that the planning board might ask a developer to put in the first place instead of playing catch up later on. But
also, if you're looking at one street and looking at solving a problem on one street, quite often they would just move to the next parallel street over. So you have to look at the whole grouping of streets and pick an economical option that would sort of work for all the streets, you know, a more so that it deters everyone from going fast on all the streets.
Yes. Yeah, I think that would be a judgment that we'd have to make, either the PD or even us, if we see something that's, you know, somebody complains about speed, but if the speed on their street is the same average speed as the average speed on the 5 streets to the left and 5 streets to the right, then, you know, maybe we can talk to the town board about reducing the townwide speed limit from 30 to 25, but it's not helpful if we just make the situation great for one street, but then we move the problem to other streets. That's not really a solution. So it's a good suggestion, and that's something we'd have to be aware of and doing an initial assessment of. So,
Bill, this is Jim. I just wanted 2 quick things. One, Pauline put together that definitions and example page. Just want to make credit for that. Just has my name under a photo or 2. But the other thing I wanted to say, and I'm not a huge fan of setting a subcommittee, but as Paulina said, if we start getting a lot of comments coming into the committee, into the Complete Streets Committee, it might be worth looking at having a subcommittee that kind of takes the work Paulina's done and starts breaking down these issues that come into the committee into different target areas, and kind of like what Clark was doing. Maybe one is speeding, another is safety. You know, there's a difference between cars. There might be a difference between cars speeding down the road versus a car landing in someone's front yard. And if you start breaking them down into categories, it might. These should really go off to the police department. These should go to the highway department. These are the Complete Streets Committee look at to maybe, you know, decide is there a demonstration project or another thing that's needed. You can always come to Complete Streets, even speed. But some of them, if we start categorizing them and maybe just have a couple people kind of do that and then report back at these meetings, might help facilitate some of this moving forward. Again, I'm not a huge committee after subcommittee. I know we already have a couple, but if we do start getting a lot of comments coming in, someone's going to have to handle those. I think the committee should maybe take a crack at them to help out the planning staff. And obviously all this will end up back at the planning department on file officially. But maybe we can at least sort some of that and start organizing it somehow. So just something to think about. We don't have to make a decision today.
okay. That's a good idea. Well, anyway, thank you also, Paulina, for trying to put this this catalog together. And so it's a start on if we have some options, and especially if we got some links, a picture and some links with the options. So if somebody wants more information on a speed platform or a roundabout or a tree median or whatever, and where they could see one, you know, I think that's helpful and part of working on our category. Just moving on, complete streets connections for school improvements. I would say if we schedule a meeting with the superintendent of schools and maybe Howard Schlossberg, the president of the school board, to talk about the 3 main things on our letter to the school, we'd also want to get out the letter that we sent to the school's engineers on each campus and the recommendations that we made to improve bikeability and walkability to each campus. So, I mean, I have shared a copy of our big complete streets map with each member of the school board, and they're probably getting tired of having me show up at school board meetings to to speak, but they know we're interested in bikeability and walkability in the town. And so it would be, again, to identify our 3 priorities that we would like to see in the school district, but also they've now gotten some money from the bonding measures that have been passed, and we're hopeful that they're going to make improvements to each school campus. And so, you know, it'd be just nice to talk to them orally about, you know, what we see at each campus and what we're recommending and how we think it would make each school campus more walkable and bikeable. So we'll do that. And then the next one, complete streets accomplishments. I've got to get going on that more so than I have. It's kind of, Jeff Twitty put together an accomplishments list for 2018. And at an earlier meeting, we talked a little bit about 2019. So I've got to put those together for 17, 18, 19, and 20. And, you know, we might list those on the website. And one other thing that I thought, you know, might be a candidate in addition to our map for the Complete Streets website is if we, I mean, maybe we would or we wouldn't, if we have the kind of process sheet that Pauline is talking about for how we process requests that come in. I mean, that might be something we'd list on our Complete Streets website. So if there was a citizen out there that's got a question, they would at least understand how we do business and trying to hear about an issue and what we would do. But I guess we cross that road down the road. Okay.
Bill,
Anything, Laura, on the Co-op Plaza?
Bill, real quick on the website, if there's any way, and Laura, I don't know if there's any way we can put like a quick call-out box on the website, just thanking everyone for their survey results. I think it'd be good for people to know that we are looking at it. It's just the 370 results and a ton of open-ended questions. It's just going to take some time. So I want to make sure people know we are working on it. We're not ignoring what we're doing. It's just, you know, it's thousands of lines of text we're going through. So I don't know if there's something we can put on the Complete Streets, a little call-out box, just saying.
Yeah, we
By
can.
the way,
Not an email blast, just something that we put on our website saying we received. Yeah, because we actually put the survey on our page.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Let's
I don't
thank
think we-
people for doing it, and then if you missed it, you can still take it here and put the link.
Yeah, that's because I thought that's what we were gonna do.
Yeah, I want to make sure if people go to either the Complete Streets page or even the homepage that they are aware, you know, even if it's just a news blast, that we do appreciate it and we are working on it. It's not highly visible out there in the public right now.
Yes, we can
I mean-
definitely do that.
let me ask on that, Jim and Laura.
Do you think we should have it as a little blue blocks on the side of our thing, or do you think we should have it like right front and center?
Whatever works. I think it'd be good to put something on web somewhere.
It's easier for me to do a little blue button, but I'm afraid that's not as obvious. I don't know.
I'd like to ask the committee, would we be willing to put the results of our survey out there somewhere and to send an email if somebody would like to review the results?
No, not until we've analyzed them.
People
No, I
gave
mean, not the specifics. I'm just saying we have crosstab tables and we have summary tables from the replies. I mean, the kind of work we're doing to summarize the open-ended, which would be on a page.
So that's in our packet, Bill. I just want to leave it like that until we sort of like release our formal results.
Okay. Oh yeah, when I'm saying at some point, we do intend to release formal results of the survey. So people that have turned in, answered the questions, we'd like to share the formal results of the survey with them, and that we do intend to do that, I guess. And if it's the case that we do, which I presume we do.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Any further comment? Any further business for the committee today?
As far as the Knott Street project goes, I had really hoped to have a public email blast completed by the end of today, but I know you guys hear this from me a lot. I just ran out of time, but we have a memo that's kind of going over the different options that we had thought about, and we have kind of like two main options for the intersection of Clifton Park and Crescent. And so like what Clark and I were doing is, you know, there's going to be like a report that's attached to everything, but we also, not everybody's going to want to read that report. So we're sort of like prefacing it with like the 2-second version, which would also be like what would be in the email blast. And then, you know, anybody who wants to dive into the details can dive into the details. But if I can do that this weekend, which is not my favorite, but sometimes happens, I will. But otherwise, it's probably going to be Monday. I will do an email blast. And so the idea is we're going to do an email blast. We've had a task force that was just looking at some initial things to see what was actually feasible as far as like town staff and fire and police needs. And now what we want to do is roll out, you know, just the basics that we have come up with and get public input on it and see if we can build consensus for some treatments over there. So hopefully, so that's the stage that we're in now, is we want to just do an email blast with this in here and give people ways that we can collect their information and their thoughts and ideas. And then as long as we still have time and I get it out on a Monday or Tuesday, I think that we wanted to kind of also allow people to speak about it at the planning board. They're not the full commission on it, but they're very good at handling public input and collecting data and stuff. So I think that we were thinking the April 12th planning board meeting, hopefully, if I can get it out quickly enough. We want to give people time to be able to digest it before they, you know, come talk to us about it. But so that's
look,
on that one.
Is this the full co-op block plaza, or is this just Crescent Road and Clifton Park Road? And
It's
and
just
the other
Crescent
end?
Road and Clifton Park Road.
Okay.
I did ask the county what the status was of their project, because obviously they're interrelated. Although not that interrelated, because you know the county does what the county wants to do. But I mean, everybody, I've never been shy about saying I'm very supportive of the county project. I think it's going to make a lot of things over there a lot better. So, but they have not gone out to bid yet. So, but they're going to try and go out to bid on that project here within the next, you know, month. So I think they are still trying to hit a 2021 construction schedule if they can. It's going to depend on how fast those bids come back and what they cost. But I think that the idea is still to do 2021 construction out there, which is it's going to be very difficult for us to tie in with our improvements that we want to do. We just are a little bit behind their schedule. And because we want to make sure that it's, you know, we've had a lot of time for people to look at it and build consensus. I just think that the time that that's going to take is not going to put us on the same schedule as the county's improvement. But I would rather do it right and get all the public comment and get people on board than cram it in. So I feel like that's okay. It's also more expensive than I thought it was going to be. Like I was hoping that, you know, adding some additional parking and trees over there wasn't going to cost that much money, but I am a vast underestimator of problems and costs. So it's very expensive.
Well, Elise, Dart, David, Carla, any of you folks have any observation from today's meeting or anything else you want to chip in here? It's we have 7 minutes till it's 4 o'clock. So anything from today's meeting that you'd like to offer an observation on?
Hey, Laura, I'm giving you the 2-minute warning.
I know. I just wanted to say, I know it's a little bit overwhelming, but I really like that people are paying attention and want to come speak to us. And I know, you know, I mean, we don't have to, but I really feel like because we're getting so much interest in Wyoming that I feel like we should just pick Wyoming for now. Like, I don't know why we need to look anywhere else if we've got everybody asking us. And there's clearly things that we can try and issues there that are interesting. Like, I'm wondering if you do like a curb bump out and a crosswalk or something at that intersection, and just look at actually the whole thing. Like, you know, I know we're not engineers, but maybe we hone in on that and see if we can get some donation services or something. I'd really like to try that.
Yeah, Wyoming certainly fits the model of what we're looking for, with having a lot of neighbor support, you know, if we're going to go and do a demonstration project or something. So we definitely already have that.
They seem very open to letting us try. So like we should pick something that we, that we can work on with them and then
Personally, I like the idea of a speed platform.
Yeah,
giving
I
that
was
a
wondering
try.
if you can get like temporary ones that you can lay down.
Yeah, you get rubber ones you just bolt into the road. So we would have to ask the PD and the highway if they'd be willing to do it.
For like a
They
week.
are very effective. Yeah.
No, I put them on for 6 months. I wouldn't do a week.
No,
I'd
that's
buy
not a
them.
demonstration project, Bill. If you put them in for 6 months, you're changing the road. You have to do the demonstration project, get people on board, analyze what happened with it for it being out there for a week, get the
Well,
public.
I guess I'd like to see a little longer than just a week or so. As a matter of fact, to change traffic, people that go through there would have to drive on them and say, "Oh, I've got to slow down, so I'm going to turn right on McClellan." So I'd like to give the experiment a chance to work. I guess the experimental intervention a chance to work. So that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to look at, but I don't know that demonstration projects typically last that long. I know sometimes they won't erase the paint, on a bike lane in a neighborhood, and it'll take a little while for it to like fade. But let's start small.
I am small. Speed platform for 60 days. That's small in my mind, but anyway, that's a thought. Okay. Well, thank everyone for coming. Thanks for the work that really people have done for each item here. And we'll continue on the survey. We'll continue with our demonstration project and keep working on other things. And so I'd like to thank everyone for coming today and for listening in. And I guess I'll entertain a motion to adjourn unless somebody else has more business to do. So I move adjournment. Looking for second. Second from Paulina. All in favor. So we'll see you on April 30 at 2:30 p.m. So
Thanks, guys. You are a super hardworking committee, and I really appreciate it. And I did send out an email of a Complete Streets presentation and a couple other things for you to look at if you're interested.